Your might is unsurpassable, my Kang.
Oh, I like that. Say it again.
Such devastation. Your might is unsurpassable, my Kang.
Just as pleasing a second time.
LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 is a game that is perfectly content following in the footsteps of its predecessors. Though it expands and mostly even improves upon much of what we saw in the original LEGO Marvel Super Heroes, you get the feeling that there's not much new here. There have been dozens upon dozens of LEGO games thus far, and if you're familiar with the series' formula and all of its trappings by this point, as many of you might be, then there's not much new to see here. However, that doesn't mean that Marvel Super Heroes 2 is a bad game, only that it's an uninventive one. Once you look past that and resign yourself for another typical LEGO adventure, you realize that this game is, in many ways, perhaps the most polished LEGO game yet. Thanks to veteran developers intelligently making use of their experience within the series, this game manages to stand out as perhaps the best realization of this well-worn formula yet. Though there's no innovations or radical changes to look forward to, the game does offer a well-written, charming, and incredibly enjoyable experience. What's most appealing about LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 is the fact that no matter what level of familiarity you have with the Marvel lore and their history, you're regularly going to find something that will grab your attention. From new fans of the Marvel properties thanks to the cinematic universe, to mid-tier enthusiasts who have a slightly deeper knowledge of the comic book characters as well, to full-blown aficionados who are intricately familiar with even the most obscure Marvel publications, Marvel Super Heroes 2 packs in something for everyone to enjoy. Much of that is thanks to its narrative setup. This is a typically lighthearted story that is surprisingly coherent and can be quite amusing, and while a lot of that is thanks to the game's excellent portrayal of a large number of Marvel characters, most of it boils down to its setup. LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 makes use of a lesser-known villain from the Marvel ethos, Kang the Conqueror, a villain who first fought against the Avengers in the 1960s. Though he isn't as popular an antagonist as the likes of Thanos or Loki have become over the past 2 years, the game makes use of him perfectly. Like most other characters that have any significant screen time, Kang is smartly and sharply written and is well voiced. Kang the Conqueror has basically managed to rip a hole in space and time to build his own demented world, that of Chronopolis, which is basically a mixing pot of settings from all corners of Marvel's lore. From Marvel Cinematic Universe locations such as Asgard and Xandar to Iron Fist's Kunlun and Black Panther's Wakanda. It's all in there. But it goes beyond just that. While one area is like your regular Midtown Manhattan, another area is based on medieval England. It's almost like a virtual theme park. LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 throws in all sorts of different Marvel worlds, stories, and characters, adds a dash of its own bizarre ideas, and brings it all together to create a world that is diverse and constantly entertaining. Every area has its own distinct flavor and personality, and making your way through each of these can be a lot of fun. What also helps is that there's a lot of stuff to do as well, from hunting down collectibles to finishing side quests, a lot of which are well designed. Make no mistake, this isn't a massive or layered open world, the likes of which we've seen in games such as Horizon Zero Dawn or The Witcher 3. Marvel Super Heroes 2 is, after all, meant to be a highly accessible game, and while its world is full of variety and dense with plenty of things to do, don't expect it to be the largest or even the most elaborate and complex open world setting you'll ever see. What's in there is really good, but it's all pretty basic, rudimentary stuff. Unfortunately, there were often times in my playthrough where, due to lack of adequate communication on the game's part, I found myself at a loss for where to head next in the world. Since Chronopolis isn't a huge enough setting for players to get lost in, I was able to proceed forward eventually, but such instances did halter the game's pacing. In fact, this issue is not just restricted to the open world traversal. Even during levels and set-piece sequences, there are often times where LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 simply fails to communicate to the player just what it wants them to do. Again, none of these instances were too frustrating, and it didn't take too long to get past them, but they did ruin the moment somewhat. Level design itself, on the other hand, is quite solid. LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 makes great use of Marvel locations, both obscure and well-known, and populates them with characters and references equally as obscure and well-known. Every level has you playing as a predetermined group of characters, combining light combat with environmental puzzles that involves using each character's specific abilities based on different requirements. Unfortunately, it's the combat of the LEGO series that shows some of its weaknesses once again. These games are, after all is said and done, made with a younger target audience in mind, and as such, they never try to be too complex. LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 is a simple and straightforward game with pick-up-and-play mechanics that people of all skills and ages would feel comfortable with. That's a great thing, of course. The downside, though, is that combat ends up feeling like nothing but aimless button mashing with no skill involved at all. Of course, this isn't a new complaint. It's one that's persisted with the series for as long as anyone can remember. If this style of combat in LEGO games is something you've grown comfortable and content with, then this might not be much of an issue for you at all. But for players who are looking for something that involves skill and progression, LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2 does nothing to change its series' ways. Thankfully enough, the other major aspect of the moment-to-moment gameplay, which is solving environmental puzzles, is quite enjoyable. The puzzles are not really mind-benders, and they're usually pretty rudimentary in nature, but figuring out which player's abilities you should use and why you should use it can often be a fun exercise. It becomes doubly enjoyable when you play the game cooperatively with a friend. In fact, while playing co-op, even the combat becomes a little more fun. The charm and colorful personality that characterizes all of Chronopolis is also something that is reflected in the visuals themselves. Technically, this game is no masterpiece, but the visual palette has a vibrant charm to it that is simply undeniable. More importantly, the simple fact that you get to see all of your favorite Marvel characters, as well as the worlds that they inhabit made entirely of LEGO blocks, just adds a unique personality to all of them. That's not to say you won't notice any oddities or blemishes in the technical department. There are quite a lot of noticeable performance issues in LEGO Marvel Super Heroes 2. You'll see quite a lot of jaggies, there will be plenty of frame rate drops, and you'll often run into a number of glitches, some of which might even force you to restart your game to the previous checkpoint. If you've been playing LEGO games for a while now and were expecting Marvel Super Heroes 2 to finally be the game that brings a change in the formula, you're going to be a little disappointed. This isn't a new kind of LEGO game, and it wasn't meant to be. Instead, it follows a tried and tested formula and does so in a solid way. While issues with the sheer lack of challenge and requirement of skill exist, as well as some technical and performance issues, the game's diverse theme park-like setting and charming and silly humor are enough to make sure you'll have a great time. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.